Ronald, Neal, how are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you for having me on your platform. How are you?
I'm doing all right, and I've been really looking forward to this.
Likewise.
Yeah, I interview kind of a variety of folks. It's kind of like a Joe Rogan kind of
Uh-huh.
um, platform where musicians and politicians and um, dancers, philanthropists, a number of folks from the Black Manosphere and academics.
Hmm. Hmm.
I came across your content because I was checking out Dr. T. Hassan Johnson,
Okay.
and he posted one of your videos on his Facebook,
Okay.
and my journey began.
Okay. Hey.
Yeah, man, I dig the way that you think, and um, I think we're going to have a really
Oh yeah, yeah,
interesting
man. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, so I want to start with this video
Okay.
here. Let me get over here.
Brothers, the worship service is now over. The worship service is now over. She is now, brothers, in a state of shock. She is now, brothers, in a state of panic. She did not anticipate the Black Manosphere. She did not anticipate the unfettered, unchained, uncensored voices of Black men. This is the first time in history that she has no control. This is the first moment in time where the forces and the powers that be cannot exercise their authority in a way through her that would fundamentally silence you. Even her minions, her flying monkeys, are perplexed. Her guardians, her watchdogs, her Rottweilers and pit bulls, they are all backtracking. They are all in reactionary mode. They are all trying to devise new ways and schemes to bring Black men into line. But all of their efforts at damage control will ultimately fail. Why? Because technology is a force today that has liberated Black men. Technology is a force today that has undermined her authority. The worship service is now over. The Black Manosphere rivals her church. The Black Manosphere questions the authority that is attached to her through the church. We are in a unique moment that we must revel in, that we must maximize, that we must take to the next level. She thinks that if she can take down one of us, the most popular among us, the man who is close to 1 million followers, thinks that if she can successfully do that, that she would eliminate our voices. But she is sadly mistaken. There are too many of us. There is too much determination. There is too much resolve. The demand is too great. The urgency is too high. And the commitment is too deep. The worship service is over. The worship of this queen has come to an end.
Now, say what you think, you know. You know, be direct. Be direct already. So, okay. You're in front of a church.
Yeah.
It happens to be an AME church.
Yeah.
You know, I was the minister of music at a Baptist church for several years, and being in church has been a regular part of my life, you know, since I was a kid. And black church really became a big thing when I was in college, in my own kind of spiritual journey, so to speak. And progressively, I've noticed that there are certain political agendas and ideologies that have began sort of supplanting pretty, you know, important principles, you know, principles about family, the definition of a family, what a family actually is. It seems to me that when the word family is used, it is not including black men. It's women and children that we're talking about. And what's interesting and puzzling to me, that it seems to me that more often than not in the black church, when family is mentioned, it's the same thing. Women and children. So can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking in this?
Yeah, you know, and there's a lot to say about what you just asserted, you know, in terms of the shifts. But I stood out in front of the church in particular for symbolic reasons, you know, and in terms of what Black men have had to deal with in not having a voice in this society, where Black men have been shamed, guilted, cajoled into playing a, you know, subservient, deferential role in relationship to, you know, Black women, you know, and that deferential relationship is an extension of our relationship to American society. So the stuff that we deal with women is just a subsidiary of something that is much bigger. So if we're having issues in terms of sharing authority, sharing power, just in our intimate lives or what have you, you can understand that by thinking about larger power dynamics in society and everything. But I stood in front of the church because the church is a symbol of authority. It has, and it, you know, has had this place of, you know, eminence in Afro-American culture. I too have a church background and everything. You could probably hear it in my inflection, preaching and all that. And so, and the church, you know, it's a female institution now.
Thank you so much for watching my video so far. If you'd like to support
There are several ways to do so below. Also, likes are free. Please comment, share, and subscribe. Now back to the video.
You know, it's a female institution now. It's a female institution. I say it's another sorority. You know, you got the Deltas, you got the AKAs, you got the Zetas, then you got the Black Church. All right, and yeah, and the reality is that up until this point, it has bolstered the status of Afro-American women. Up until this point, the way we think about Black women has been shaped by the church. Even when we think about motherhood, and we think about you know, women from you know, back in the days. All right, you know, Tyler Perry's Madea. All right, those old matriarchal figures. You know, those church mothers. All right. You know, and so every tradition, regardless of your tradition, regardless of, you know, whether you're AME, whether you're Baptist, or you know, you come out of the Church of God in Christ, you know, CME, whatever brand of Methodism you can think of, we have these matriarchal figures that have been a part of the history, all right? And they've been the centers of power. And you can't question them, all right? And they are infallible. You know, we treat them like, you know, the Bible, okay? And up until recent times, and as I said in the video, with the advent of technology, in particular, technology, the kind of technology that we're using right now, okay? Yeah. Up until the advent of this type of technology, that authority could not be challenged, all right? In the way in which it's happening right now. So yeah, we're talking about, I mean, we're part of the, you know, the Black manosphere and everything. And, you know, as we talk, man, there's so much that's happening. We've seen the rise, we've seen the popularity, the growth of Kevin Samuels, all right? Yeah. And I was just listening to a stream that attorney Dennis Sperling did earlier today, where he was breaking down an article written by somebody from the Griot, criticizing Kevin Samuels, okay? And it is clear, you know, that our voices are making an impact in ways that no one could have imagined. I'm not really surprised by it because I think that all of what is happening right now, you know, is bound to happen. If it didn't happen at this moment, it would have happened at some other moment. Because, you know, and I've said this in other videos, you can only suppress a population for so long.
Yes, that's facts.
You can only marginalize a group and spit on the group and disrespect the group and kill the group and do all sorts of things. You can only do that so long until at some point that group is going to clap back. That group is going to, with no concern about consequences, no concern about pushback or what have you, they're going to speak back. And we're in that moment right now where we're talking about our lives. And I know in these spaces, we talk a lot about the dynamics between men and women, which are very, very important. But we know that it involves more things. It involves the condition that we, you know, endure as Black men in America, and being able to speak to the complexity, the depths of that condition. And so standing in front of that church was just, you know, symbolic of where we are, and that this authority that once asserted itself and once censored us and all of that, it no longer does that. We're in a different place, man. You know, and it's so much so where I'm, you know, in a recent video, I'm calling the Black Manosphere Church. This is our church. You know, if we want to be inclusive, this is our mosque. This is our temple. This is our sacred space where we can talk about our lives, you know. It's our barbershop, you know what I'm saying? And it is rivaling the Black church and
Yeah, that's
the Black woman in the
that,
church.
that's totally true. You know, in the years, I mean, I've been, you know, a musician in church for, you know, a long time, for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And before I was playing music in church, I was, you know, I was sitting in a pew, you know. And you know, just over time, you know, I started noticing more and more that there were fewer and fewer men of a certain age group, right, that were present. And I started to notice a sort of shift in the preaching. So the preaching seemed to be very right between the eyes and stuff. When there's a lot of men in the service, there was, you know, it was more sort of fire and brimstone, more Geno Jennings, you know, there was more of that. But now it's like there is a lot of finger wagging at men. You guys man up, you do this, right? But then there's not very much critical about women, about the kinds of things that women do. And we have different tendencies. Men have a certain kind of tendency as far as the things that we get caught up in. Women have a certain tendency, stuff that they tend to get caught up in. And it seems to me that most of what I hear is focusing on these things that men tend to get caught up in, but with no sort of equal counterpart. You know, no really addressing some of these other issues. And if you consider the fact that churches are pretty much these days, the demographic is mostly women, then it starts to make more sense. Now, one thing I had thought about and this is, it's a problem, it's a challenge. I don't know what the solution is, you know, because I think historically you had many more men in leadership positions in church, but as there are fewer and fewer men, especially of a certain age, in church, then what that necessitates is more women to take on these positions. And then I think it's going to even that demographic's going to even get worse. The demographic, the out of balance numbers, let's put it that way, is going to even get worse. So part of it is not necessarily the fault of the people that are the faithful attenders, of the people that are in leadership positions. They're finding themselves in situations where they have to kind of step up and say, hey, if somebody doesn't do this, it's not going to get done. But I think the sort of genesis of this is the sort of full embrace of feminism.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, it you know, the thing about, you know, the church and, you know, Christianity and religion just in general is that it doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? I mean, what happens in a larger society does impact these institutions, especially if the institutions do not have a sufficient, like, countercultural, counter-religious orientation, okay? Right. And what I mean by that is so I mentioned the Pentecostals. And so, you know, back in the days, you had like movements, holiness movements and what have you. You had this idea that was popular among certain type of groups, that you had to have a certain type of behavioral standard in order to be seen as authentically, Christian or what have you. And those groups created a counterculture. It was a counterculture. It was a culture that worked against the dominant culture, because remember, at one time, secularism was not embraced by churches. If it was embraced, it was at a very moderate way. But what happens, and see, feminism is an extension of secularism. And what happens is that once you open that door and you say, okay, we're just going to be liberal and we're not going to have any real hardcore standards. We're not going to have any hard and fast rules about how we live and how we govern ourselves. We're going to just let individuals do what they want to do. There are no consequences to life, choices and what have you. Once that door opened, all right, you just had a major, it just changed everything. And so the liberalization of Christianity, which includes feminism, was just embraced wholeheartedly. And here's the thing, we have to understand that women have been the greatest targets of that, okay? A lot of this stuff we talk about, liberalism and feminism, this stuff has targeted women over the last 50 years in an aggressive and intense way, and it has been successful in changing their worldviews, all right? And so now, you got this basically, female-dominated institution, you know what I mean? And the masculine principle has been lost. It's not even respected. We don't even understand the significance of it. And unfortunately, I don't see a good future for these women, even if they continue, because you're right, somebody got to lead, right? If all the men are gone, they want to keep it going, and then you got the women that are there, but it's not going to lead to a positive future. The world, the two genders, and I know we're in academia and people talk about all the different genders and gender fluidity, but they're two basic, there's man and woman on planet Earth, okay? Yeah. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And man and woman, in order to live on this planet, have to know how to deal with each other. And if these religious institutions, the churches, and what's happening in the churches is not happening also in the mosque. So it's happening among Muslims. I talk to Muslim brothers all the time, and it's there. All right, they've got Islamic feminism, okay? And
goodness gracious.
And they're driving, and men are being driven away from the mosque, okay? So it's there, but it cannot, what we're talking about cannot produce anything productive in the future. I just don't see it producing anything productive. I see it crashing and burning. If it does not reunite with the masculine, I just see it crashing and burning. It's kind of like Wonder Woman. This is the old idea of these women living in a bubble, detached from the world and everything, and they're trying to, sustain themselves. You can't do it. It's imaginary. It doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
And it doesn't work for a variety of reasons. Kevin Samuels frequently talks about how, men have made the world so well and in the technologies and developed the system so well that women are not even aware of, they're not even aware of, how much they need us.
Mm-hmm.
The systems can sustain them. They can just live in the system. And now all of this stuff is sort of first world problems.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you go other places where, you know, where you actually need somebody to protect you, and you need someone to actually go do the physical labor, then all of a sudden it becomes a different sort of conversation. One of the reasons why I think the pandemic has produced a lot of these conversations, and I think served as a major sort of shot in the arm, if you will, for Kevin Samuels and his sort of meteoric rise, is because, at least momentarily, I think people were forced to recognize that, well, maybe we do need men. Maybe men aren't that bad. Maybe I should be thinking about my future a little bit. So, all right, here let's play this second video, and this is actually the one I'm about to play is actually the latest one that you uploaded. Let's see here.
Brothers, I said to you before that this manosphere, this black manosphere, it can be anything that you want it to be. If you want this manosphere to be a ghetto, it can be a ghetto. If you want this manosphere to be a planet, it can be a planet. The choice is yours. We are in a moment right now, brothers, where we can take this enterprise to unknown heights. We're in a moment right now, brothers, where we can go into another universe. But it's up to all of us to decide, to make the choice as to what we want this black manosphere to be. Now, we can sit on the corner and we can debate and we can talk about our baby mamas and we can talk about child support, and those things are important. But we can do more. We can talk about more. We can deal with politics. We can deal with economics. We can deal with our place in the world. We can take this black manosphere anywhere we want to go. The choice is ours. It makes no sense for us to argue and go back and forth over frivolities, over petty things, over a black man who is opening a door for all of us. We can decide right now whether we are going to take advantage of this moment and expand and evolve and speak not just to North America in this context, but also to the entire world. If we want to, the choice is ours. We can be a corner store. We can sit on the block. We can hug the block. Or we can be cosmopolitan. We can be global citizens. The choice is ours. It is up to us as to where we want to take this black manosphere. It is my position that we must maximize all of our resources and all the technology at our disposal and be prepared to speak to the entire world, and to do so in service of black male independence, BMI, Black Male Agency, BMA, and Black Male Empowerment, BME.
So I wanted to ask you about, and I've heard you use those acronyms frequently in your videos.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you can spend a little bit of time on each of them, BMI, BMA, and BME.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, BMI, it emerged. I thought about it, conceived it, during our election season. That's when I started really uploading videos on YouTube. And it was Ice Cube's contract with Black America,
yep.
Everything that came out of it, and the pushback that Ice Cube received from none other than the female part of Black America. Okay. And,
totally ridiculous.
Yeah. And oh yeah, there was also Killer Mike as well. When Killer Mike went to sit down with Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, to secure resources for small businesses in Atlanta and everything, and people had something to say about that. And I said, you know what? Black men need to be able to assert themselves in an independent fashion.
Yeah.
And we need to have an ideology that speaks to that. And because the reality is that political liberalism doesn't do it. Political liberalism has been violent towards Black men, okay?
Absolutely.
And political conservatism, both parts. Conservatism also, all right? So, they don't fare any better in terms of how they deal with us, okay? So we can't deal with this liberal side, and we can't put too much stock in that, and we can't put too much stock in the conservative side. So we need an independent. We need an independent orientation, I think, that transcends these different political wings, in the United States that simply do not capture the complexity of the Black male experience, that do not adequately address our condition, and so BMI, Black male independence, is that, it is that ideology, okay, that we are not going to be, we're not going to be colonized by any of these ideologies. We're not going to defer to, so with Black people, the vast majority of Black people are, they vote Democrats, as Democrats, and are under the whole liberal wing. And Black male independence means that if you have to go against the dominant Black consensus, then that's what you're going to have to do, all right? And so Ice Cube, that's basically what Ice Cube did, by first, dealing with the Trump people and then trying to go to the Biden people and everything like that, just dealing with whoever's in power, whoever has power, whoever will be in a position to wield power, you know what I mean? And you're not affixed to, some old, tired mode of politics that people think are somehow, they think is what they think, they see it as a marker of Black identity. Okay, that being a Democrat in that fashion is just in our bones, and it's not in our bones. Okay, and so that's Black male independence. And so Black male agency is BMA, is the recognition that no one's coming to save us at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And there's no Salvation Army coming for us or rescue mission. We can't afford to hold our breath waiting for people who have erected themselves as saviors. You know what I mean? So it's like in this moment, you get all these, women who are all these female politicians and, who are seen as, having the answers to everything that ails Black people. You know what I mean? Your Stacey Abrams, and you got the activist BLM and all of that stuff. And that we're not holding our, BMA says that we are not holding our breath on these people, waiting for them to act. BMA says that we have some skepticism, lots of skepticism there, because we have reason to believe that these so-called saviors are not going to work in the interests of Black men. Okay, and so yeah, so the thing is that BMA, Black Male Agency, man, it just means that we have to be 10, 20, 30, 40 steps ahead of everybody else. You know what I mean? BMA means that, yeah, we're just ahead, we're just working ahead of the curve, you know what I mean? And, again, looking at someone like a Kevin Samuels, it's so interesting. You have a whole bunch of folks in that video. He's created a lot of conversation among so many people, not just women, but men. They don't know what to do with him. You know what I mean? Many men don't know what to do with him for a variety of reasons. And Kevin is one of these people who's just not, he doesn't stop. It's like you don't stop for the criticism or what have you. You keep on going. And there's all questions about, well, how long can you keep this format up, right? How long can you have this platform where you're talking to women the way in which you're doing? Is this something that you can do for another 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? That's those real questions. But BMA says that you're never resting on your laurels. You know what I'm saying? You're always thinking about other avenues, other things you can do. A guy like that, he's multi-talented. He has more than one skill set. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have to do that forever, And so, and how we are with technology, man. You know what I mean? I mean, we know that, YouTube can act up anytime and, want to censor things and what have you.
It was acting up last night. What's today? Is today Wednesday? Yeah, last night I had my show with Ike Ogiamian, Getting Ish Done. It's like a productivity show we do every other week. And man, the YouTube crashed. The whole, yeah. So it's like, what do you do when these other platforms, and that's, it kind of raises another issue. It's like, because the Black manosphere, it is a sector of YouTube, right? It's a bunch of content creators on YouTube. So the whole thing is like, if this is going to be something that continues to grow, it needs to exist outside of that platform. Now, I think YouTube has been a really good place for it.
Of course, yeah.
And I think that the live streaming sort of model, the way that it works, I think it is the best platform to sort of get these kind of conversations going.
Absolutely.
And for people to show support and to feel like they're part of the show. And there's all of these good attributes of the YouTube engine, the way that it works. However, it can't just stay there, because it's very vulnerable. I mean, anything could happen.
Yeah.
The YouTube police could start getting out and start cracking heads.
Yep.
And we don't know when that might happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So You know,
Yeah.
unfortunately, Kevin has a huge Instagram following also,
Yeah.
so he's ahead of the game on this. He's thinking on the road.
No, absolutely. That's the agency, you know, and ultimately we have BME, which is black, you know, black male empowerment, and you know that's the nuts and bolts for me, man. That's the nuts and bolts. That's when we're talking about the education, when we're talking about the economics, when we talk about the resources, when we talk about the tools that we need to flourish. You know, that's you know empowerment. It means that we shouldn't be the only demographic in this society that you know doesn't benefit from the goods in this society. All these we have all these other groups who stake their you know place in the society and are aided. You know what I mean? Of course, you got the women, you got your LGBTQ people, you've got your immigrants, you got all these different other groups who see this place as belonging to them and they feel entitled to stuff, you know what I'm saying? And it's like,
Yep.
we should not be left out.
Wait a minute. I thought that black men were the white men of the black community.
Yeah.
Because we're the because in the last election we showed that we weren't really down for the black cause, by in a pretty substantial fashion not voting for Democrats. We're not voting for Joe Biden. And that's kind of where that sentiment started coming out, because black men, we're still men, so we're still the enemy, right? We're still privileged. We still have male privilege. And so applying this empowerment word, how dare you apply that word to black men?
Oh yeah. It's offensive. The word empowerment, and it's interesting because I've talked with some academics who are kind of fearful of the language, that it makes them, it's like, you know what I mean? Because we have accepted this idea that there is something wrong with black men being totally actualized, you know what I'm saying, as full human beings. We have accepted this idea that there's something, we have accepted the idea that black men are supposed to be disenfranchised, okay? And, and empowerment is the antithesis of disenfranchisement, you know what I'm saying? And
plus the word empowerment, it seems to have a feminist connotation to it, because they have branded that word so well. Last night,
and we have to remind them that the word doesn't belong to them.
Right.
They don't own it.
Yeah, last night, Ike and I were talking about leveraging the system. It was like our third episode talking about leverage, and leveraging the system. One of the topics was it was about messaging, and how the media, uses the sort of control of language. And one thing that I brought up was how the word marriage has undergone, and even the way that people refer to their significant other. This word partner.
That's
the word now, right? Partner.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, and it happened so fast.
Yeah.
It was like I went to sleep last night, and then this morning all of a sudden everyone is using the word partner.
Partner, oh my God.
And that it's a way to normalize things that maybe we don't actually think are normal. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, without going into too much detail about that, but it's like a masterful job the media does at programming people by controlling the way that they even define words. The word marriage, again, is one of these. Now, we know what that word has meant forever and ever. Amen.
Yeah.
But now it means something different. Other things have been applied to it. So now when you say the word marriage, which had a very specific definition, now it's like there's another question to ask. You know, it's like, really? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. So and the media has done a good job in redefining and social engineering the way people think about this, especially women. You know, and we know the language of partner, know where that comes from. You know what I mean? And they've just embraced it wholeheartedly and everything, uncritically. You know, so that then when you apply it to marriage, it really don't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? And it diminishes those traditional definitions of marriage. You know, it really does. It really does. It just waters it down. Yeah, it just waters it down, man, and sanitizes it, and it has no real meaning to it.
All right, so I want to talk to you a little bit about your upbringing, and maybe you can talk about your upbringing with the sort of aiming towards maybe a certain kind of awakening that maybe you've undergone that has led to some of the views that you have. Who hurt you?
It was my mama. My single mother. She damaged me. I'm trying to undo the damage. I know that's the standard, you know. But I get it. Yeah, man. And seriously, yeah, I mean, I grew up in a single parent household, man, you know, and my father, my parents were never married. They were never married. And my mother wanted to marry my father. He didn't want to marry her. And he didn't want to be a father, you know. But she insisted on having a child. So, you know, growing up in it, I didn't have any siblings and what have you. And there was struggle that was there. You know, I was her only child, her son. You know, I was one of those black boys who was told that he was the man of the house. You know, when I was 8 years old, you know, my mom, she was a nurse. She worked a lot. And I had, you know, when she worked at night and everything. And I had to be a very self-sufficient kid at a very young age, you know what I mean? That's where a lot of the independence come from, you know? And, you know, to her credit, my mother did a good job in kind of, you know, teaching me how to take care of myself, you know? And, you know, she did the best she could, what she had. But that's kind of the foundation. I grew up in church, man. My mother was Christian, and I was a Christian kid, always in church and everything. You know, church kid, you know. And And, you know, growing up, I was a church kid who eventually, you know, put one foot in the streets. You know what I mean? So I was a church kid that had a foot in the streets for a little while. And I was an athlete. I played football in high school. I was on a wrestling team. That's where I got a lot of masculinity, you know. The first major male figure that impacted me was my wrestling coach, a man named Samuel McWoodson, black man. He was a bodybuilder, very disciplined. He took me in, encouraged me to wrestle, and I want to go into this story. I met him. I was in indoor suspension. I was bullied. I was bullied when I was in, we called it junior high. And there was this kid, his name was Terrence, and he was a bodybuilder too. He used to work out and stuff like that. And I was a fat kid at that time, you know what I mean? And Terrence, he just loved to bully me in class and flick my ear. And this one day I just got tired, man. And I just got up and I just grabbed him and I slammed him on the desk and I just started hitting him. And then somebody called. They got security and everything. And before you know it, we're in indoor suspension. And Coach Mack ran indoor suspension. And I had to be in the indoor suspension for a whole week. And he recruited me for the wrestling team. And before you know it, I'm running upstairs and doing all type of drills and everything like that. And I stuck with it, man. And I loved it for it, man. I learned so much from Coach. And discipline, it was discipline. So he was the earliest black men to really impact me. And his son was a wrestler. And eventually I played football. We all played football together. Anyway. So yeah, man, so, you know, growing up like that, man, kind of like, you know, run the mill, you know, kind of black male experience and stuff. And, you know, I liked girls and, you know, chased the girls in high school and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, then eventually I went to college and there was a moment in my high school years where I kind of moved away from churches and all that, just left it alone. And then when I went to college, I started to go back into church and I got real heavily involved in ministry and all that. And before you know it, you know, I became a licensed minister and preaching and everything. And just running with preachers, man. I was running with preachers, man. Black Baptist preachers in Miami and Dade County in the state of Florida. And that was, I mean, it was just a very interesting world, man. And there were ministers, black men, older black men, my pastor, and I just had a mentor who just died less than 3 weeks ago, who was a pastor in a church, historic church in Miami, who had a profound impact on my life. And he was a boomer. My pastor my first pastor came from the silent generation. So these were old school black men, man. You know what I mean? And so I point these guys out because even though my biological father wasn't around, I was fortunate to encounter black men, all right? Solid black men, men who had families, men who were married, men who were about business, you know what I'm saying? And that had a profound impact on me, man. And I felt this sense that I was meant to be some type of leader. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, man, you go to college, I go to graduate school. You know, I went to a seminary, theological school in Atlanta, Georgia, the Interdenominational Theological Center, and did a master's degree there. And then after that, I moved to Tennessee, where I, you know, enrolled. I did a PhD at Vanderbilt University, and I was still active in church there. And had a short stint as an associate minister, pastor in a United Methodist Church. And then later, I had 1 year. I had an experience of being one year as a pastor in a church, and while I was working on my PhD, and then towards the end of my PhD program, an opportunity opened up for me in South Carolina to teach at a HBCU, Claflin University in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And then I went there, man. I was there for like 7 years and taught. And then I left after 7 years and moved to North Carolina to teach at where I'm at now in Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem. And so that's kind of a brief history.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, man. So you asked me about my views, man. Man, my views, is impact, of course, by all those impacted by all those experiences. But I would say this, man, is that I thought I would have a traditional life. I thought that, like, I'm 47 right now, I'll be 48 in September. I thought that at this point in my life that, marriage, family, all that kind of stuff. I'm not married, don't have any kids. And in my early 20s, I felt strongly about those things, and I figured, do the right thing to put myself in a position, be with someone who would be, a wife, you know what I'm saying? And, and I went back, even with my pastor, man, I would sit there, we would talk about it, while I was in school. And again, this is a man from a completely different generation, never really went to school. And he was like, if you get married right now, it's going to interrupt your education, you know what I'm saying? And I didn't go that route. A lot of it had to do with education. And the other part of it, man, was that what was happening, and I'm referring to the 90s, man, the 90s, early 2000s, man. And when men were hit, man, and here's the thing, man, so all that, during that whole era, man, it's just, feminism is kicking in everything, man. And it's all in the culture and the waiting to exhale, man. And in the music and dealing with professional women and, this sense that, Black men, we're talking about, Bill Clinton and the crime bill and all that kind of stuff. And the super predator stuff and all that kind of stuff. I mean, so, culturally, man, there was just this deep, I felt it, all of us felt it, this deep feeling that Black men didn't belong in this country, this deep feeling that there was something wrong with us. And I kept encountering this in my interactions, with women, you know what I mean? And had relationships and everything like that, man. But it became clear to me, especially as I was matriculating, through these various programs, man, and in the classrooms and in seminars, man, that this stuff was intense. And I couldn't, this idea that Black men being these boogeymen, being these tyrannical patriarchs, I mean, all this nonsense I'm getting in academic spaces that nobody is pushing back on, you know what I mean? And I'm pushing back on some of it in the classroom with my, my peers, male, female peers, and what have you. And I just tell you, man, it just really bothered me when I was in graduate school that no one was responding to this stuff. And I was like, we are here getting decimated. And, back in the 90s. And I just didn't agree with the way in which feminists were framing Black men, you know what I'm saying? And their insistence, that we are these tyrannical monsters. Every Black man is Ike Turner, you know what I'm saying? And, and brother, I couldn't do it in my dissertation. But I said that, okay, once I get this degree and, once, I get a book out, I got to deal with black men stuff. I got to deal with our stuff, man, and because it just wouldn't go anywhere, man. And you know, and there are so many layers to it, man. I got friends who I went to high school with and grew up with who are incarcerated now, man, and you know, who not getting out of prison. You know what I mean? Been in there for 20 years and stuff, like 25 years and stuff like that, man. And you know, and I would just say that I've always had this sense, again, independence. I just had this sense that there was something wrong, fundamentally wrong. And, you know, as I got older, the need and urgency to address this stuff just continued to amplify. All right. And so, and I tell you what, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back was around 2014, you know, with the stuff that was going on in Ferguson, you know, and Michael Brown. And of course, you had the Trayvon Martin stuff. I can go back to 2012, but just during that era, man, I'm like, these people are killing us, man. You know what I'm saying? And we don't have no real response. I'm an academic, and I'm like, we don't have no real response to this stuff. And these people think our lives are jokes. You know what I mean? We're just disposable to these folks, man. You know what I mean? And I was on Facebook, and so I just started raising hell on Facebook, man. You know what I mean? And I, you know, doing that for years and writing articles and stuff like that. And you know, eventually, you know, I discovered the Manosphere on YouTube years ago. You know, as early as 2012, I saw Tommy Sotomayor on 2012. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it was around, you know, 2015 when Obsidian came online. And then you had O'Shea Jackson and other people and everything like that. And then I found BGS, you know, and so many other guys. And I was just riding. I was a spectator. I was an observer for years, you know what I mean? And I'm like, man, do I want to get up in here and do this thing, man? I'm like, because I'm like, this is the time we have this technology. And then 2020, man, hit. And this stuff with the election, man, and Biden. And I just didn't like how we were positioned in the 2020 election. I did not like Biden's position. And I did not like the way in which, you know, black male issues were just trivialized, you know what I'm saying? And our concerns about this presidency, you know, and, you know, I was never a Trump person. I was independent, but I was like, yeah. you know, Trump, you know, they were using Trump as a scapegoat for everything that's wrong with America.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, no, that's too simple. It is too simple. You all can't do that. And you know, and my thing was, you know, we need to go in a different, you know, direction, you know, politically. And you know, I didn't jump on the Trump bandwagon, but I wasn't afraid of Trump. Okay, I wasn't afraid of Trump. And whatever happened, and I really felt that he was, in many respects, a necessary evil to put these liberals in check, to scare their behinds, so that they would make some corrections or what have you. But anywho, man, I was pushed over the edge. I was pushed over the edge during that time, man, and just started making the videos and everything like that, because I just saw how our issues were just being treated in a very, very marginal fashion.
The marginalization of black men. Mm. So in my own journey, you know, it's like one of these things where you have a sense that something is wrong. You know something is wrong, you've been told these sort of like idealized stories about if you just play by the rules, just do the right things, and work hard, that things are going to tend to work out. And the biggest thing is that you're going to tend to have success dealing with women.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and it's like it's like this major gaslighting experience where you're having these experiences that are telling you that that stuff is not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's, but you don't really have anywhere to really talk to anybody about it, because we used to have barbershops. You used to be able to have these frank conversations. Now the beauty shop is kind of connected to the barbershop, so you can't really talk that way. You used to be able to have these conversations in church. But we know that the demographic shift has made it such that many of these sort of topics are, it's like they're looking down their nose at you. Like, like, what's wrong with you? You must not be doing something right. And so, you have that whole kind of thing going on. And then the whole political thing just kind of adds on top of that. It's like, really, Democrat or Republican? Are people really fooled by this? Do they really think that one of these parties is actually for them? I mean, one thing that always, one thing that should communicate to people that there's something wrong. Regular people are not so black and white, so polarized on every issue. Regular people don't think the way that supposed the Republican platform versus the Democratic platform is. Regular people, like if you pull anybody off the street, nobody is all on this side or all on that side. Nobody. And so it should like kind of clue you in that the stuff is phony. It is not real. It is set up that way to keep all of the same people in power. Because if the Democrats are wrong, then the Republicans must be right. And if the Republicans are right or are wrong, then the Democrats must be right. You keep the same folks in there. You don't have to be in office to still be close to the reins of power. You become a lobbyist. There's all these think tanks. You can work on people's campaigns. There's a million ways that you can stay close to the reins of power. And the real national religion in the United States, it's not Christianity. It's national politics. This sort of bullying of people that around national elections that regularly occurs, where if you're not going to vote, then then what kind of evil person are you? Or even if you decide that you want to vote third party. I've been a third party voter for probably the last 15 years. So you want to vote third party. Oh, okay. But if you vote third party, that's a vote for Biden. Or if you vote for third party, that's a vote for Trump. Yeah, it's like, dude, which one is it? Is it a vote for Trump or is it a vote for Biden? That whole thing. But like the combination of all of that stuff, and just seeing that stuff present in, and then discovering the manosphere, and it's like, dude, are you allowed to say this stuff? Because you get so conditioned to be sensitive and not you know, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and you've been taught that certain lines of reasoning are wrong, or that's too aggressive. There's that whole thing. So then it's like initially, in my path kind of went through. I saw that film by Cassie J, The Red Pill, and then I started. But prior to that, I was dealing with stuff, and I had a sense of things. But that was probably the first thing on YouTube. And then I started dealing with like Paul Elam and like the kind of MRA thing. And I was like, man, this is very interesting. It's a lot of this stuff is true. And there's an academic, Janice Fiamingo. And I was watching her Fiamingo files, and I was like, okay, this is interesting, because she's a former feminist, and she's kind of given the inside scoop on a lot of stuff, and this is pretty interesting. And Jordan Peterson, and then I started getting suggested like Solomon Jones, and then from there it just went all the way in. It went all the way in.
Rabbit hole.
And but it's interesting. One thing in this last video, this corner store video, you're talking about what the manosphere can be. And one depiction that you hear of the manosphere, or the black manosphere, which are not the same spaces, really, by the way. But one depiction is that it's like this sort of monolithic group that if you can find anything in there that is negative or misogynistic, or that's just angry men, ranting or whatever, then that means that's what everything is in that space, And what I found is that it's such a diverse space. There's so much different kind of stuff, and you have stuff from the kind of content that you create, which is very thoughtful. It's provocative, but there's an academic, like this academic thing that's happening throughout, and it's nuanced. And then you have like cats that are like pickup artists, and that's their thing. Hey, I'm going to tell you the tricks that, so you can sleep with as many women as you want. All of that stuff and everything in between is all in this sort of same space. And so to sort of try to criticize Dr. T. Hassan Johnson, who's a part of the manosphere, or Dennis Sperling, in the same way that you would criticize, a PUA, is not fair, and it's not a reasonable reading of what actually is going on. What do you think of that?
No, I agree with you 100%, and we have to always remember that as particularly the black manosphere grows in popularity, or as it is being discovered, I'll put it like that, by those outside of it, who will be quick to broad brush, you know what I mean? Journalists in particular, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, Dennis Sperling did a live today when he was talking about this writer who wrote Negrio, criticizing Kevin Samuels. And those people don't understand what we're doing. And they don't have the curiosity to see the diversity and what have you and all of that. And so when they come to us, we have to kind of, listen, we're not one thing. And it's a good thing that we're not one thing, man. And that's what I was saying, you know, this thing, I mean, this is digital, man. This is digital. And I think we do have certain elements within the Black manosphere that want to see it, you know, in this little small little thing, you know what I'm saying? And who want it to be, you know, something where, you know, you got guys under a tree, you know, on the corner just talking. And that has its place. I won't knock that, you know what I'm saying, in and of itself, but it's like, we can do more. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's up to the imagination. You know, we can take it anywhere we want to go as long as our imaginations are willing, are open, and we can do that. But yeah, man, and I like the diversity. I like the diversity because you can't say this is one thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of like, you know, you think about, again, like religion, man, and, you know, and I teach religion, and, you know, Christianity is not one thing, you know what I mean, in terms of traditions and everything like that. I mean, there's so many different offshoot stuff. We talked about it, man. I'm standing in front of a AME church. Down the street, you got a Baptist church. Further down, you got a Holiness church. Then you got a Catholic church. Then you've got an Episcopal church. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, then you go further and you got a whole different religion. You know what I'm saying? And so we don't have to be one thing. But I do think that we have to affirm the fact that this is a male space. And when we talk about the Black manosphere, that it's a Black man's space where we deal with Black men's issues, and that it's supposed to be a space where we deal with Black men's issues in an uncensored way, without any interference, you know, from others. Without any editors and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
We don't have to talk the way that you want us to talk.
There you go.
We can talk the way we want to talk.
There you go.
This ain't for you.
Yeah.
You know? And what is it's so ridiculous that has to even be a talking point. That we should be able to say things and talk the way that we want to talk, without you having a say, and without you trying to make somebody feel bad because they use words you didn't want to use. Don't listen then. Go somewhere else. We're trying to get some work done, talking the way we feel comfortable.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I get you. And the thing about it, here's the deal, man. I mean, you know, I mean, America. This is a capitalist country, right? I mean, this is a market. I mean, people choose. You know what I'm saying? And you can choose to not listen. They choose to whatever. You know what I'm saying? And
they don't like that though. They don't like that. They they want to still tell you what to do, even though they can choose something else.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, you know, and again, what I like about this situation, this moment right now, is that we have carved and continue to carve a greater place for us in the market, okay? Yeah. Because there is a need for this. Because as I said, you can't continue to suppress Black male voices and not think that, you know, negative consequences won't even eventually come out of it. The thing is that, yeah, you embrace the fact that this is a market and there's a need for this. There's an audience for it. And, you know, we can be here just like other people. I mean, no one is telling the feminists how they should conduct themselves. I mean, they have their own market share. No one is telling the LGBTQ people how to be and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And the world is big enough for all of us, you know? And that's the thing. Even like in the video, man, I didn't go into this, but it's like, yeah, man, especially this digital space. I mean, this is the globe, man. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
There's room for your voice, my voice, so many other guys. Yeah, the pickup artists, the dating coaches, you know, the political people, you know, the academics. I mean, you know, we're not on an island, man. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, there's room for all of us to do, you know, what we have to do to address the concerns of Black men.
Well, Dr. Ronald Neal, it's been a fascinating conversation, man, and we must do this again.
Yes, sir.
I have a live stream that I do each week called Thunder's Thoughts, and maybe I can bring you on that show at some point. Yeah, this has been a great conversation, and you know, it's nice to talk to someone who's a fellow academic, and a fellow participant in the Black manosphere, and you know, fellow you know, church attender, you know, and all of that. It's good to talk to you.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having me, man. I look forward to further conversations, man.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Well, God bless you.
All right. We'll see you, man. Peace out. Peace out.